John, you just came back from China. You emailed me from there about some of the exciting things you saw there. Did you come back with a feeling of excitement? Wow, here's a huge market that we can dive into if we can achieve leadership on this electric car vehicle? Or did you come back with a little sense of dread, like these people are about to do for electric cars what they did for tennis shoes? They are going to clean our clock.
No, I did have a little bit of dread, but I saw great potential. Number one, just the issue that we talked about yesterday of can we scale fast enough, and can we do as Brazil's done and some of these other places, and as China's done. In the last 6 years, they've been able to go from virtually 0 electric vehicles to 40 million. They have 40 million electric vehicles on the road in China. Now,
40 million?
40 million, yes. Now, given that they are primarily scooters and mopeds, you know, they're not cars, but they still are electric vehicles that they plug in every night, that they plug into the grid. But I think our opportunity is to demonstrate to the Chinese the technology of how that grid integration can improve efficiency with the overall grid, lower the need to have coal plants on the grid, improve the ability to put in and integrate in wind power, for example, because we have to look at this as a system. As Congressman Inslee said in his speech, it's not just a transportation vehicle anymore, it is a grid appliance, and it's a grid appliance that we can demonstrate through our technology and help deliver that into China and make them more efficient as well.
Jay, you know, when I hear this discussion, and it's so exciting, but part of me wants to ask, who are we kidding? Just a few blocks from here, our Congress has been debating now for well nigh a year whether and how to extend the production and investment tax credits for just wind and solar energy. You couldn't make that up. That we are still debating the production and investment tax credits for wind and solar at a time when Germany has a 20-year feed-in tariff. You couldn't make that up. Now, how can we be sitting here talking about taking the lead in what is clearly the next gen, and we can't even catch up with the old gen?
Well, I think what Tom needs to understand is what Will Rogers understood. And they asked Will Rogers, how do you come up with humor every single week? And he said, it's easy when you got the whole U.S. Congress working for you. So you got to understand our role. We have a symbiotic relationship.
That's the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's the ecosystem, right. Look, I've been working on this I was just talking to Dr. Frank, for 13 years. In 1994, 1995, I started to get involved in this effort. How are we going to develop a clean energy system to stop global warming? And in 13 years, we have made a nanometers progress in 13 years on public policy to do this. And I have to tell you that, you know, you can ask my wife how angry I get about this, coming home at night, not being able to solve this problem, not getting these portfolio, you know, standards through, not getting our renewable tax credits through. You know, if you think you're frustrated, come talk to me when I see it every morning on the House floor. But I will just tell you this, I really believe, you know, although I didn't really like the book, The Tipping Point, that much, because the title was the whole book, frankly, but I think we're there. I mean, I really believe we're there. I really believe this is one of those magic moments in American political history and technological history, and I'll tell you why. There are 3 things that have happened starting next January. There is a burst of technological innovation that is now becoming commercially available in this and 20 other technologies. So right now we are in the cusp of the commercialization of a whole suite of technologies that can get this job done, all happening at the same time. I think that's a magic moment. Second, the other scientific assessment is that the debate of global warming is over, in part because of your advocacy, which all of us appreciate, and many others. So the scientific certainty is there on the need to get this done. And I do believe this January you will see the largest political change since 1994, which frankly will create an environment, a political environment that will allow quantum leaps rather than just nanometers. So it's going to be, all of the planets will be aligned next January, and I'm very excited about that happening. And it's going to be a moment where all of us are going to need to be engaged to make sure that happens. So I got to tell you, next year, I think 2009 is going to be 20 years of progress in 1 year.
Andy, I want to ask you and John a follow-up to Jay's point, because Andy, you're in the trenches right now. You know how hard it is to rewrite the rules, the enabling rules for this. And John, you've been in the trenches. So let's just go back to this question, the point that Jay alluded to. Congress has been stuck on on a relatively, what should be a relatively easy thing, the extension of these critically important investment and production tax credits. From your perspective as someone in the administration, John, from your perspective, someone outside, why is it stuck?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
I want to respond to Jay, but first I want to compliment him. He's on my energy committee. He's one of the great champions of our portfolio. So we're that's the typical Washington technique, right? Compliment before the dagger. But the answer is revealing because I don't believe that the problems that we just identified on energy security and climate change can remotely be aligned with biennial electoral processes and the election calendar. So the very nature of waiting for the right number of votes for any one action to take place really answers this. And so the true answer is it has got to be taken out of the hands of Congress. And that's a very painful thing for Congress to actually accept because Congress likes to be asked and they are the representatives of the people, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a multi-generational problem with myriad faces of a magnitude unpreviously faced. And when we have multi-generational problems in this country, typically we remove it from biannual election processes, from incremental annual appropriation processes, and whether that's home ownership, or whether that's student loans, or whether that's putting a man on the moon, or creating an atomic bomb, when we have a multi-generational process or problem to tackle, we organize ourselves and our institutions and our funding processes differently. We have not been doing that on energy. So policy cannot be reliant on the tax code as it was 15 years ago. And it cannot be reliant on choosing technological winners. Here's the policy for plugins, here's the one for wind, here's the one for nuclear, here's the one for coal. Instead, our policy has got to be permanent, it's got to be technology neutral, it's got to be predictable for continuous and consistent capital formation, and it's got to be carbon weighted and include externalities for our security. In other words, we need policy that is attributes-based. What is it we want our energy portfolio and supply to look like? Clean, affordable, domestic, secure, greenhouse gas reducing energy. And how do we get there? That's not going to happen through this year's election or next or last year's. It's going to happen through government, because that relies on government scoring at OMB and CBO, where the accountants are managing the managers, and the realities of institutional mechanisms that are too short term to give us the solutions we want. So we need an institutional and organizational revolution in how we face down these things, and then you will get the appropriate policies that can guide the marketplace to give us the results.
John.
I guess I'm tempted to say I like Andy, and I think he does a terrific
We all
job,
do.
but he left one thing out. It's going to take presidential leadership. And I think that that's really what Jay was talking about. I think at least we have two candidates. I think they have different positions on this question, and Senator Obama leans out further, but at least they've embraced the challenge of climate change and the need to cap carbon in an extremely serious way. And I think that will change the dynamic, and I think this election will be a significant election. I don't think this is just something that ebbs and flows and in which politics doesn't matter. And I think the particular example that you raise is in fact an example of that, where there's, as I think Jay noted in his opening remarks, there was a one-vote margin in the Senate that filibustered a bill that could have gotten this job done. And I think that what we see now is a kind of crippling politics in Washington that needs to break apart, and we need a realignment. As I said, I think the good news is that there is Jay talked about tipping point. I'm glad he didn't read collapse, but I did read collapse. But I think there is I think at least in Washington, I think amongst the public more generally, there's a sense that we got to get on with this. We really need that conversion from a high carbon base to a low carbon base. That's going to take policy that's going to be formed in Congress. They have a role to play, but what it's going to really take is leadership from the White House driving this process forward, and I think that can get done.
Let me just a quick follow-up on that, because I always kind of wonder when the leadership moment is, when that tipping point is going to happen. I mean, we're just fresh from a primary campaign where 2 of the 3 candidates proposed a rollback on the federal gasoline tax, a summer holiday, which everyone knew was a completely fatuous solution.